Muito bom dia.
Good morning. I'd like to greet everyone, and as of now, the South American Institute of Health is starting the online transmission of a seminar about access, industrial development, and innovation in the health sector. This lecture is going to be given by the Secretary of Science and Technology and Strategic Assets of the Ministry of Health, Professor Carlos Gadelha. This lecture is going to be given in Portuguese with simultaneous translation into English and Spanish. To choose your preferred language, just click on the link. Professor Carlos Gadelha will speak about innovation, access, and development from a theoretical and political perspective of the industrial complex of the health sector. At the end of the conference, we'll have a discussion with the audience comprised by specialists in the area and representatives from the Ministry of Health and from the several countries, and by yourselves who are watching us in real time online. If you have questions, please send them to us by the email comunicação-isags@unasur.org and or through the Facebook page. This is the third time that ISAGS disseminates knowledge and discusses important issues with an online transmission. This tool has been strengthening our institute, which intends to promote the dissemination of knowledge and the creation of innovation in the health sector. I would like to thank all of the people and organizations who've helped us, the General Secretariat of UNASUR, the Presidency of Suriname, the WHO, the Ministry of Health of Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, and the Observatory of Mercosur, the Social Institute of Mercosur, and Peru, Brasco, Informiensp, and the Salud Derecho from the World Bank, among others. Even though it's a very young entity with a little over 2 years, ISAGS has been managing knowledge and developing leaderships and providing technical assistance. During our short life, we've had 3 seminars. We've edited a book about challenges to universality and equity. This book is already available in Spanish and English in the bookstore of our website, and we'll be launching another book that will deal with the surveillance systems in South America. During today and tomorrow's workshop, we'll focus on updating knowledge, creating a critical mass through discussions about the process of economic integrations of the countries of UNASUR, and we'll speak about a very contemporary aspect, which are the relationships between public health, industrial development, and innovation in the health sector. Secretary Carlos Gadelha is one of the people in charge of the process of developing and implementing the strategy of strengthening the complex of the health system in Brazil. The concept proposes a coordination among the services related to health with aspects related to the economics and development of the production system of the health sector in general. Professor Carlos Gadelha is a doctor in economics, and he coordinated the study about the health economic complex for the project about future perspectives for investment in Brazil, and a project of health development coordinated by PAHO. He's a general coordinator of the master's degree course at the Sergio Roca Public Health School, and he was also president at Fiocruz between 2007 and 2010. On behalf of ISAGS, I would like to thank Secretary Carlos Gadelha, who, amidst his many business commitments has opened up a space in his agenda to be here with us. And please, I do urge you to participate in this discussion by sending your comments and questions. Please, Dr. Carlos Gadelha, have the floor.
Primeiro eu queria falar do enorme prazer de estar
Well, firstly, I'd like to speak about
com meu amigo Temporão.
the
Perguntei para ele
immense pleasure to be here with my friend Temporão. And I asked him if I could be a little informal at the beginning of my speech, and he did authorize me.
É uma honra orientar isso. E eu quero dizer que as ideias colocadas aqui,
I have to say that
de
the
certa forma,
ideas that will be discussed here are, in a certain way, a result of a meeting between an economist, which is myself, who's always thought about development and innovation, but had little knowledge about public health. So we used to see the health system as an extremely innovative system, and a health specialist who was always questioning what health was to be used for, if not for citizens. And this gentleman was Temporão. And I think that the ideas that I will expose now are a result of this meeting between development and a modern perspective about public health and collective health that resulted from the Brazilian health movement that transformed health into right. So I'd like to share with the minister the creation of these ideas, which open up a new paradigm for public policies, both in the field of economics and in the field of public health. Usually countries, Brazil among them, will split intervention between the economic order and the social order. In the concrete terms, you cannot separate the economic and social orders. The development model has in itself an economic and a social orders. And from the bottom of my soul, I would like to say that I was blessed with this friendship with Temporão, which allowed us to cast a new perspective on an object that was treated with a certain bias. The field of health seeing innovation as a problem, and economics seeing innovation as a solution. And I have to say that it's neither a problem nor a solution. It's the way we deal with innovation, and according to Marx's language and to Schumpeter's language, depending on the type of innovation and the type of research, we'll have a country and a region that will have a development model that's more or less favorable to society. So here, our role is to question and to politicize innovation. What, for whom, and where, and when it should be applied. So this meeting is based on a national policy that's being created since the beginning of the century in 2003 or 4, but it actually gained strength after Minister Temporão took office, after the creation of the productive development policy in Brazil. And after the incorporation of Minister Alexandre Padilha, it became a state policy that in my opinion, is irreversible in Brazil. One cannot make history without hearts, without friendships, without emotion, and this is why I am speaking about the friendship and emotion that this event represents to me. Life is hard, and just to give you an idea, today we are defining at the level of the Ministry of Health, we are deciding about the procurement of equipment for radiotherapy, where Brazil will associate access to radiotherapy in the entire country with the local production of these devices in our continent. So this is a historical event due to its own nature, and I'll speak about the general ideas. Please do not count my introduction against my total lecture time. And it also involves something that is happening today, where we are designing a model of access and innovation that is completely integrated. I am here to speak about the experience of Brazil as a background for general issues that are important for the region. So I am not here to speak about how Brazil is advanced. I do think that we've been able to make progress, but I'm here to speak about questions that will lead us to discuss this marriage between access and development. This is why I will speak about the conceptual base that we developed, and at the same time I will shed a light on the agenda of what Brazil's been doing in terms of a regional agenda, much more than a Brazilian experience. How do I control the slides? All these people that deal with innovation, like me, usually have problems with gadgets.
Bom, gente, a estruturação do que eu vou apresentar.
Well, the structure of my speech begins with a general overview of health in the Brazilian context, the industrial complex of health in Brazil, and the technological incorporation policy. And I will not speak about pharmaceutical assistance. I'll speak about access, where pharmaceutical assistance is one of the components. Radiotherapy, for instance, has everything to do with access. So I speak from a broader perspective, and I think that the area of drugs has made huge progresses, but we have to radicalize that, and we have to discuss access related to all technologies and to non-technologies. Oftentimes it's important to think from the perspective so as to improve access, and for us to think how the scientific progress is going to be delivered to citizens. I'll concentrate more on the general and less on the specific aspects of the Brazilian experience. The first perspective is the development perspective that we adopt, and for that I've brought a sentence by Celso Furtado, an economist and developmentalist of Brazil, that has everything to do with the experience of CEPAL. I'm sure that the sentence could have been uttered by several other icons of the economy in the world, where he associates economic development and technological innovation. So if you read the first two words, they are economic development, and the last two words are technological development. And this sentence was said 49 years ago. It is not true that innovation is something that's being dealt with in the 21st century. Celso Furtado, 49 years ago, said that there is no development if you just repeat the same old. This is not how you achieve development, and this occurred back in the time of the struggle for industrialization. Development occurs when you transform yourself, but Celso Furtado goes beyond that. And I like Celso Furtado much more than other icons of economics because due to his being scholar, much more than an economist from the South, he will speak about the social relations and political relations that may be the biggest hindrance for social development.
So he also talks about this process of a change, social change, to be able to deal with human needs. He passed away, and he said that our region was able to develop the productive system, but the social targets were not reached. This was after a long dictatorship period in Brazil. The development of the productive base had not really been able to deal with human needs. Inequality had increased, so he said he could not say that this was a developed country if we were not dealing with human needs. And in regards to innovation, we're not talking only about technological innovation, we're talking about the differentiation of the productive system. To produce in a different way, this is also talked about within a Marxist vision. I cannot develop if I don't change my form, the way I produce. So what does this have to do with health? So a system of health that it goes out of the hospital and really puts basic needs first. I'm changing my way of developing, and if I can't change the way I develop, I produce, I will not be able to have the results I want. So when I talk about this, what is the health that we need? We need to say what is the productive structure that we have to develop. I'm going to develop only diagnostics technologies for great hospitals concentrated in only one or two capitals in our region, or will I develop technology, edge technology using nanotechnology, for instance? I also want to mention Nelson and Franco that represent our productive sector from the Osvaldo Cruz Foundation as well, and many others. They're all people that are concerned with the use of technology for social purposes. And if we diagnose the health for women and children in our region, I will have to use nanotechnology, rapid technologies, diagnostics technologies, so that we can, with one saliva drop, for example, from a woman, I will be able to know the 15 possible transmittable diseases that she has that could have an effect on her pregnancy. If I can do this, this is high technology. These are micro nanotechnology spheres. So if I don't have this type of technologic standard, I will not have a primary care standard in our region. So it's not true that primary care is low technology. It's not true that so that we have universal systems in our region, I have to only use simple technology that are directed to basic care. Our reality is a lot more complex today. I need to have high technologies to be able to have universal systems. I'm not going to follow the presentation. What I want to say to you is that perhaps the greatest issue in the public health in the 21st century is the direction of science and technology. I think this is our agenda in the 21st century. And I hope my friend Paulinho that is here, that also helped us in the BNDES Bank, Development Bank of Brazil. This area is no longer a sidelined issue in regards to our public health. We're talking about the center of our health system. Either we control our health system or we will be dominated by the market logic that does not deal with public health properly. So I'm going to talk about high technology, information technology. I cannot be able to take care of the elderly if I don't have advanced telemedicine. So I have to be able to really use the most modern technology in regards to medicine to serve a new productive base. So I'm trying to think, how do I do this? Another example, this is the last one, personalized or tailor-made medicine. This could be a factor that really changes the idea of having a collective health system. It's a tailor-made or personalized, so I have to go and see if I can pay for it. I will decide if I have to do preventive surgery or not. I can divide the health system, and everyone has to take care of their own system individually. Or this personalized health system can help me to be able to have a generalized access to health that will be rational. For example, if we incorporate, like Brazil has, cancer medicine for breast cancer, this type of medicine, personalized medicine, will help me to define which women, due to their genetics, are sensitive to the medication. Only 20% of the women can use this medicine, and it will help them. For 80% of them, it will not bring them any good. So this type of personalized medicine, if it's used, it allows us to have a large-scale action to incorporate this last generation medicine, and we'll be able to have rational use to really apply it to that 20% of people that it will help, excluding 80% of this target group that will only be considered a market and not really a citizen that really needs that medication. So this personalized medicine, Marx would say, let's not break the machines. Technology is a good, an asset. It can be used in one way or another. So this personalized medicine can be used to divide our universal system, to break down our system, or it can be used as the only way to have a universal policy that will be rational and that can fit within our public budgets in our region. So these are three examples that I bring to you, which state that this vision, which is from Celso Furtado, a bit more conceptual and comprehensive. If I had to conclude, I would say that we have to define what is our productive base, what is our research base, what is the innovation base that a universal health system requires. And this productive base, reiterating this to the entrepreneurial leadership that are present here today, this productive base generates income, employment. So this is a role of the state to create this virtual cycle, to be able to direct the private investment, but which is moved by the social idea. So we have something here, an idea from WHO, which states what is the need to be able to link research with social needs. So I say that either we have the sanitary authority, I'm going to be very radical now, to command the industrial policies of science and technology and innovation, or we will be subordinated that at the end of this innovation process we'll have to choose a technology A, B, or C, or in an agenda that we did not help to build, to construct. So I think it's very important that the sanitary authorities will have, the health authorities will have the courage to be able to go through this barrier and say, this industrial policy is my issue. The research policy is my issue, is my topic. I can't allow this just to be moved by competitiveness, because if not, we're always going to be doing the same thing over. We're not going to be doing anything useful. We're going to be choosing from a great series of technologies which are predefined and which I did not have any influence on the whole process. So under this point of view, we are working with these two different dimensions of health. We have the citizenship issue and also health as an area for development. But more than this, what I would like to say is that I will not have the health as a right of our citizens if I do not have a productive base that allows people to have access to health. Just to give an experience, a Brazilian experience, in 2003, when it broadens the access to health, we have one of the most successful programs implemented. Temporão followed. He was an agent of this transformation. One of the most successful programs to treat AIDS, for vaccinations, for transplant today. Brazil is the first or second country in the world that performs transplants. The blood derivatives as well. In 2003, our deficit. This is for our region. I don't have the data for the whole region, but our deficit leaves $2.5 billion to $11 billion. So recently, the economic environment was ill. From one day to the next, the health became 20% more expensive due to financial speculation in the real estate market in America. And when the exchange rates changed from 2 to 20. So if I do not have a regional productive base that is cooperative, I will have increasing problems to be able to ensure that the system will be universal. When I have a deficit of the budget due to the exchange rate, we see all our handicaps, our deficiencies. So how do we pay our bills? There's no percentage of the GDP that allows us to pay that bill. If I'm vulnerable to a market that can oscillate or variate and change the cost of health due to some speculation that happens somewhere else. So in this perspective, under this perspective, I think we have to advance our constitution. I like the Brazilian constitution. I think it really puts health first. It's really something we can work with. We have also the market, which is a national heritage, but the social order and the economic order is two sides of the coin. I cannot advance in the social side if I don't advance economically as well. So I have here some data. I'm going to skip over this data. What I wanted to talk to you, what I wanted to say, for instance, we have to spend a lot with health. We spend around 9 to 10% of the GDP with health. So I think that in 2050 we will have around 20% of our GDP in health expenditures. But it's very complicated to really have research policies in this area. We're mobilizing the productive area that really will get up to 20% of the GDP. We see what's happening in the States today, where the advisor was there and he was doing his agenda, his development agenda. He was only speaking of health, and he's just saying, if I don't speak about health, I'll be forgetting 25% of the GDP, of the American GDP, and 20% is of the technological nucleus of the 21st century. In Brazil, this is also the case. I'm not saying about a productive system or something that is small or something that is manageable in international trade relations. I'm not talking about a small sector which I have to spend a small amount for my population to have access to it. I'm talking about an area that in Brazil, for example, represents more than the farming activities, which has been presented as a great driver of the economic growth in Brazil recently. I'm talking about 50% of the weight of the productive industry in our country. I'm talking about a productive system that is powerful, complex, that will determine. I was in the Congress recently talking about intellectual property, and I said we're talking about the future of the 21st century in our region. We're not only discussing health. Through the health perspective, we're discussing something much larger, which is what is the model of development that we want to achieve. In this perspective, I also wanted to highlight something which is also very pertinent to this meeting. We cannot separate. It's a grave error to separate the health industries from the health services. So the process of generating knowledge and the process of productive transformation, what are the examples I gave you? So we have primary care, basic care. We have nanotechnology, which is biotechnology that uses equipment for diagnostics. So I'm talking about a productive system that is interdependent. We will introduce in Brazil now the vaccines for HPV. We're going to be mobilizing this whole system. Women that need treatment and need to be treated in the health systems, 30 years from now, they won't need to anymore. So I'm using vaccinations to change the health system. I have to be able to create a vaccination network that we don't have today. I have to train human resources to do this. I will have to make available equipment, devices, syringes, and equipment diagnostics equipments that will also be part of the fight against uterus cancer, for example. And women and young teenagers that will use these vaccines, but also those that have already passed the vaccination age with advanced diagnostic. So this idea of working with the system of health, aside from the health system, this is an integrated system. I'm working with an integrated system. So to remove the health system is like taking out the manufacturer from the automobile industry. It's like saying, I'm going to work with the spare parts and I'm going to forget about the automobile industry. In an economic view. In a social view, if I would try to separate this, if I would try to say I will have policy for medication, policy for vaccinations and drugs, and I will forget that this is inside a policy of access to health. So what I'm dealing with is a productive system, and this is not only something philosophic. If you ask me, what is the critical point when you transform a medication, an innovation in medication into an asset for the population? We need to do clinical research. Who does clinical research? Is it the industry? No, it's all carried out in the health services. So essential part of the innovation, and we have great national institutes for health services. We have great institutes that generate innovation and institutes of health knowledge. So from this point of view, what we can see, and this is something that we see in our region, is a division between the scientific knowledge and social development. So the great dilemma that we have ahead of us is how to match the knowledge, generation of knowledge for social development. And it's not enough. It's important to create small incentives to improve my research activity, so now it will match with society. Or I do a surgery following Celso Furtado, Marx, Gilberto, so I will only talk of the economies from the left wing, or I do a total change in the productive system that will be more competitive with the participation of companies, national companies, that will also be part of this change. Competitiveness is good. It gives us more options. So either I change this productive system totally and I really go to the center of economic interest, or there is no incentive to be able to generate economic and social development. So either I create mechanisms to induce the entrepreneurial strategy within the health system, or I will always be discussing how I deal with a problem and not how I come up with a solution. So here we have the data from the trade deficit in Brazil. I think this, if we take 70% is in the area of medications and drugs. If I add to the blood derivatives, this adds to almost 70%. But you see here also 22% is in the area of equipment and materials. So this portrays that dependency that we have. That's much more precise than the patents. It shows us what we're doing, and that we have for universal access we have to buy because we don't know how to do it ourselves. I already had discussions with a biotechnical company, and I said, well, but we have mechanisms that we can use. We can use the flexibility of trips. And the answer I got was, look for someone how to do this. Look for someone that knows how to do this. And no one in the whole world knew how to do this. So flexibility is very important. We defend this view. In the Congress, we've talked a lot about this. But if we don't know how to do this, we are a hostage of the technology that we do not control. And at the same time, if we do know how to do it, this is very important. We're having this discussion in the ministry. You have another relationship standard with the international industries. They start saying, okay, so what are the rules of the games? Oh, is it a universal system? What is the rules of the game? To implement radiotherapy in the regions or to promote universal access? Okay, well, I will invest then in the region. In Brazil, we have been able to create cooperations involving big pharma when the government knows where they're going to, because then you can attract the foreign investment. Because just of philanthropic interest? No, it's because of the public need and the market, the public expenditure. And that is where we come to the great transformation idea that I want to talk about.
I'll skip through many of the slides because they are not important right now. There's been a change in Brazil and the law of procurement of the country. That had been under development for the last 10 years, and I remember, Nelson, that we used to say that it was going to be impossible. There was a change in the legal framework where health is the only sector in the procurement legislation of Brazil that is able to make commissionings of technologies that involve the immediate procurement of those products where technology is being transferred. So you can legally do your processes of reverse engineering. You can start by importing a product, and what's the magic about this? You can use the public market and say that you'll have a market horizon for companies to produce in the country, and that market horizon is given by the demands of the unified health system. So it's not any product. For instance, you can come and produce HPV or equipment for radiotherapy or oncology equipment or products for providing primary attention to to Brazil. And for that, you can guarantee a public market for another 5 or 10 or more years if there is a permanent process. In this new legislation, and this is very important, the health authority can establish or can commission directly to public agencies, and this can be applied to any public agency. One single university, we haven't yet leveraged even 95% of the potentiality of this legal framework. A technological farm can offer directly to the Ministry of Health technologies that are being developed in Brazil. Even more importantly, or as important as what I just said, these public agencies can relate to technology companies and to private companies so that the commissionings made by the Ministry of Health lead to clusters of innovation involving the public and private sector to generate innovation to Brazil. Here we have the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, and I could mention Butantan or the Technology Park of Ceará, our Hemabras in Pernambuco, and several experiences that use these legal frameworks. Hemabras, for instance, Brazil has just decided Brazilians, hemophiliacs, are under treatment with factor VIII recombinant through a partnership where the new legal framework has allowed for the ministry to purchase from Hemabras, which in turn is coordinated with private companies for technology transfer. The private companies have two ways to relate themselves to the state. One, through the routine procurement processes. And secondly, if they want to be part of a productive arrangement that will bring about innovation and technological autonomy for the country. I think that there are two things in Brazilian experience that are milestones, and I'm almost done with my speech. There are two milestones. As I said, the first thing that I would like to mention is the role of the Ministry of Health in coordinating this process, and this was created by a decree by President Lula in 2008 during the administration of Minister Temporão, where the Ministry of Health will coordinate 14 agencies of public administration to establish the policies in the health area. This was guaranteed by decree. President Dilma reinforced this institutionality, and it was the only area of this plan, Brazil Maior, where this institutionality was maintained, and it is an exemplary area that allows for coordination between the procurement power of the state and the role of the Ministry of Health, and coordination between the Ministry of Science and Technology and Economics. Without the Ministry of Planning, the law wouldn't have been approved. It was decisive to have the participation of the Ministry of Planning and the fostering agency. So I'd like to highlight two main aspects in this presentation. The first is that the ministry coordinates the agenda of science and technology and industrial policy in a decision based on SUS's decision. If you go to the BNDES and open up a program for the complex of the health sector, the first goal is to meet the needs of the unified health system. In the bank for economic development, if you go to FINAP today, the same thing is going to happen. If you open the page of the MCT, and you'll see that it focuses on meeting the needs of the unified health system. So you're able to coordinate the policy of the industry and technology, the policy of financing, the policy of public procurement, the policy of intellectual property that's in permanent progress. This is an important discussion, and we could spend a whole meeting talking about this. These policies focus on access to production and health. This is a slide that we present in the interministerial group meeting that had the participation of the Ministry of Science and Technology, the Ministry of Commerce, and the Ministry of Health. In all the meetings that we've been doing since 2011. The first thing that I would like to open up for discussion is the role of the health authority and the coordination of the hardcore. We no longer want to work with side policies. We need to incorporate an agenda that was foreign to us in the last century, the agenda of innovation, of technological development, and the agenda of the private sector. If we set out to do this, we cannot be afraid to coordinate ourselves with the private sector. The second thing is what I showed about the use of the procurement power. This is something that is non-negotiable in our region. We need to have the procurement power. The Ministry of Health and the Health Authority can exert their strength through procurement. If we didn't procure, we would be coadjuvant actors. If we are a market and if universal health depends on a public market, we can exert our role to induce research and innovation. So this is the main subject that I would like to mention for the debate. Monica asked me to stay in a very general level, and I think that I am here fulfilling what she asked me to do and not go into too many details about Brazil. There's just one thing, though, that I'd like to convey to you. We have more than 80 partnerships, 6 vaccines, 4 health products. We had our number of partnerships is fourfold now in relation to what it was 4 years ago, and the purchasing power is in 4 billion reais to foster innovation and research. If we think from a regional perspective, we can start making a certain difference in the world. We can start establishing more competition and more partnerships for the private sector to do what our health sector needs, and we can start balancing out the game between innovation and access. And 14 products are already registered at Anvisa, our health authority. By the end of the year, we should have 20 products registered, including medical devices. We have to wait for another month to disclose the first medical device that is going to be registered. I received information from Oswaldo Cruz Information, and I told them, well, Brazil may not be aware of it, but the national technology is within each and every Brazilian, because everyone who's received a vaccine or who's been on cancer treatment or AIDS treatment has somehow benefit from the technology that was developed based on this process, and that is still expanding. And the last but one slide, I was going to speak about technological incorporation research, but I decided not to. Well, I brought a sentence by Schumpeter, an economist. Many people say that we're dreaming. I'll not translate it, otherwise it's not going to be good. It's Giovanni Dozzi. I had used this a while ago. I went to Italy to discuss technological incorporation and access, and I liked this Italian economist. Now, we have this perspective about comparative advantage that's embedded in the minds and the hearts, which means that if you're good at something today, this is what you should do. So if you're only able to make basic and primary products for export, this is what you should do your entire life, and you should not change the production process. But Dozzi used to say that the comparative advantages, the things that you're good at today, are usually a result of what in the past were political dreams and bets in the public and private partnerships. The past that we inherit cannot restrict our willingness to advance in the future. No one asked us in the last century if producing oil was efficient or not. That was a state decision. It was a sovereign decision. I used to say that today about the 21st century. Please do not tell me whether producing drugs or devices in our region is efficient or not. Well, it's necessary politically. It's necessary for our region to have more autonomy. And in the future, you can ask me if we're efficient in that or not, and then we can discuss about efficiency. When all of these programs have been designed and implemented, we'll certainly be able to show society that we've been efficient. But please do not require our dreams to be measured against short-term accounting strategies. What we are proposing is a strategy that will allow for a game-changing situation in our health sector. And for that, in our regions, we need to be able to combine the universal health system and the national system of innovation and technology, and therefore defining a new standard for economic and social development. The idea is that if we do not make progress in these two subsystems based on social needs, our region will be forever in delay and underdeveloped. I am not comfortable about the recent evolution that was demonstrated by Brazil becoming part of the emerging countries, but we still have these challenges in terms of overcoming poverty and hunger, and we need an international cooperation to strengthen these two arms of development, innovation, and the welfare state. Thank you.